Well, it is, as always, a very good morning, a very good afternoon, or a very good evening to you, wherever you are listening to this coaching cafe, either live or via your favorite streaming service. My name is Natalie Ashdown from Open Door Coaching. I'm joined on the line today by Paula Jones Hunt, our resident HR specialist. And today we're talking about mental health conversations in the workplace. And that theme that we hear when we're running workshops on mental health conversations around, I'm not really sure if it's my role to get involved. So that will be our topic of conversation. Before we begin, as always, let us acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians on the lands on which we are meeting today and their continuing connection to the land, the waters, the communities of Australia, and the lands from all around the world upon which you might be joining us today. We pay our respects to them and their elders past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities from all around the world. So as I mentioned, over the last few weeks, and in particular over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about real topics in coaching in the workplace. And today we're talking about our role in mental health conversations, as it is actually a prevalent thing that we need to think about in our workplaces. And how does coaching work? What's the coaching response? What do we do? So that's the topic of our conversation. For those of you that are new to our Coaching Cafe, we say every week, welcome. We are all about creating a community, sharing learned experiences and having thought-provoking conversations. To our regulars, welcome back. You know, we love joining you here every Friday. Or maybe you're a regular listening to this on your favorite streaming service. So wherever you are listening to this podcast, welcome back. It's really great to have you here with us. And if you are interested in your ICF-CCEs and you are listening to this live, we will have those available free of charge. It's a service that we offer to you as our community, as our alumni, free of charge. They'll be available at the end of the session. So before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that we are speaking about mental health in the workplace. And if you're listening, you may have a lived experience with mental health. You or someone you know may have a lived experience with mental health. And some participants might find it confronting, the content, or it may cause you distress. So if you or someone you know needs support, then we really encourage you to reach out to those important services we have available. Particularly here in Australia, you can contact Lifeline, Beyond Blue, the Suicide Callback Service, and if you feel that your life is in danger, please call 000 or the emergency services in your area or country or region. And we've got both the telephone numbers and we've also got the website addresses up there if you do need support. So with that in mind, Thursday, the 10th of October, just yesterday, marks World Mental Health Day around the world. And it's not just in Australia, but it's around World Mental Health Day around the world. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, says that World Mental Health Day is an opportunity to raise awareness of mental health issues around the world and to mobilize the effectiveness and the efforts in support of mental health around the world. Interestingly, the official theme of World Mental Health Day for this year is it's time to prioritise mental health in the workplace. Now, we've been doing mental health in the workplace for quite a few years now, even before COVID, and we've been mobilising conversations around mental health in the workplace way before COVID. So it's really great actually to see that this is a focus, mental health in the workplace from the WHO. Paula, just let me get your initial thoughts on that before we get into our conversation.
Yeah, so the thing about it is mental health has been an issue in the workplace forever, right? It's always been an issue because it's a people issue. So when you put people in a workplace, there's a mental health issue. The shift that I see, and the really exciting shift, is that we are now acknowledging that it is an illness and that there's a focus on how we actually improve our organisations and workplaces to provide environments where it's not an impact, and to also not crucify anybody who raises that they might have a mental health issue. So these are really exciting steps to continue to move us forward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And when we think about why the focus is really important, there has been some recent studies. So the global burden of disease study, but also for those of you that are in the Asia Pacific region with us, the mental wellness in Asia. The Asian Development Outlook. I've got the references there on the screen for you. These studies, these global studies, are actually talking about the rising mental illness in the Asia and Asia Pacific region. They're talking about a growing percentage of the adult population experiencing diagnosable mental illnesses in any given year. 4% in Singapore, 20% in Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand, etc. The People's Republic of China, India, Japan, Republic of Korea, all of these prevalences of mental health, poor mental health, have actually been increasing. And they're suggesting that in Asia, the problems arising from poor mental health are the second largest contributor to years lost because of disability. And if we also think about the World Health Organization, we want to just show you the statistics here just to give us a background as well. The recent data from the World Health Organization, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development data, they identified 5 leading mental health problems in our region, in the Asia Pacific region: depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal behavior, and substance abuse disorder. And what is interesting is in the cross-sectional studies that they're doing, the prevalence of these conditions is actually increasing. So there's a lot of work we can do. There's a lot of awareness we can raise. There's a lot of conversations we can have to actually start to make a difference to these statistics. And just you might have listened to the presentation we did last week where former group captain of the Air Force, Andrew Figtree, introduced us to a lot of the concepts, the core concepts around mental health. And he gave us a really great rundown. And as part of that, he also talked about when should we be concerned about someone in the workplace or people around us. And these are the 3 things that we might actually think about. Paula, let me throw to you because you're our expert in this area.
Yeah, so the thing is about what you notice about someone. So if there's a major change in a person's normal way of thinking, feeling, or behaving, so if you're noticing someone who's upbeat is suddenly not upbeat, and we're not talking about one day because we all have moments. We're talking about you've noticed prolonged. It's over the last couple of weeks. There's been a change in the words they're saying, the way they're presenting themselves. If the changes are affecting the person's ability to carry out their usual learning, home, or social activities. So if you've got high achieving people in your team who suddenly stop high achieving, or you've got people who you notice that they're missing things that they wouldn't normally miss, and it seems really strange for them to be missing them. If the changes don't go away quickly or they last longer than expected, so for example, 2 weeks, that's when we need to start being concerned. That's when we're noticing that it's more often, it's a change that's not just a once off. And so knowing your people in the workplace in particular is the key here, is because then you can notice when there's a change.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those criteria with us, Paula, because I was reflecting like we can be under pressure and we can be in a ramped up stressful situation. For example, if you're under pressure to perform in terms of deadlines or something like that, and we might make a couple of mistakes, we might miss something, but that's because of the environment or it's because of the pressure that we're putting ourselves under, and then it might die off once we've achieved those deadlines. So what you're really talking about here is a major change in a person's normal way of thinking, that it's actually affecting their ability to carry out their normal work at home or in their social environment, and it actually goes on for a period of time. So it's not just I've made a mistake and then tomorrow we fix it kind of thing. So thank you for sharing those major 3 criteria that we're looking for. So the question that we get asked is it really my role? So when we're delivering mental health conversations in the workplace, it's not uncommon actually for people to say, is it my role? And so I was thinking about, is it my role as a coach? Is it my role as a leader? Is it my role as a human being? And so when we think about it from different perspectives, as a coach, there's lots of opportunity. As a leader, it's incumbent upon us to be looking after our people and their psychological safety and well-being. But also, as Sticky so beautifully pointed out last week as well, it's our role as human beings. Of course, we have to look after ourselves and think about our own capacity as to what we're able to do. But bringing ourselves as human beings, as leaders, and as coaches, there's really great opportunity here. And as coaches, we might step out of our coaching and we might so-called put on our mental health conversations hat. We do have a great opportunity because people share with us a lot of things during the coaching. So we might have to actually stop the coaching or segue, I suppose, into our mental health conversation. We might even have to make a referral or offer a referral. So all of these opportunities are open to us as coaches, as leaders, but most importantly, I think, as human beings. And Paula, I know you feel the same way, but would you like to make a comment on this?
Yeah, and I guess the main comment I want to add in here too is that these are mental health conversations. So we're not talking about performance managing somebody with that has mental health concerns. And I would highly, I don't know how to say this one without, jumping up and down with big stars. But if you have a staff member with a mental health issue and you need to performance manage them, then you really absolutely need to see your HR people, because there are lots of laws in place that you need to navigate. So as a note, this is not, I'm someone who has someone who's underperforming and I need to manage their performance. These are, I've noticed somebody who looks like they're struggling or something's not quite right, and I want to have a conversation with them. So it's really important to separate those two. And Figgy last week, he really nailed it when he talked about it's as a human. And I know that people feel uncomfortable having the conversations, and we talked about barriers last week. And it's really a fear that I'm going to be rejected or implicated or impacted because I had this conversation. But when we're thinking about these mental health conversations, it's a little bit, we've got to put that to the side, because what is really important is that person. What's really important is that that person knows that somebody cares. That person knows that there is someone in the world who can assist them if they need to reach out to them.
Yeah, beautiful words. I totally agree with you, Paula. And everybody, if you're wanting to make a comment or ask a question as we go along, please feel free to pop a message in the chat box and we'll pick those up as you go along as well. And I was thinking about when people say, is this really my role? I was reflecting on, what is that code for? What's underneath what they might be saying there? So on the surface, as we always think about from a coaching point of view, someone might say something on the surface, but what's underneath it? And I was reflecting on that, as you were saying, Paula, as well. What is it code for? Maybe they don't know what to say. Maybe they think, I'm not a psychologist, so what am I going to do? It's not my role because I'm not a psychologist. It's potential that people have actually tried to approach the conversation or the situation and they didn't get anywhere the first time, the second time, the third time. I agree with what you were saying. They might be concerned about, what if I get it wrong? Or what if I don't have the correct words to say? I don't know what to say. And the other thing I was thinking about is also, I'm not their manager. So I'm not their manager. It's not my responsibility. This is not a performance conversation. So, is it really my role? And then I think that's where we get back to, I hear all of these worries and concerns, like, I don't know what to say. I'm not a psychologist. What if I get it wrong? I'm not their manager. I hear all of these things. And it really comes back to us as leaders, as you said, Paula, and as Biggie talked about, and you've talked about, us as human beings and how we show up for people in the workplace. And as you said, getting others around us to support us in those conversations, such as HR or the employee assistance program, whatever the support structures are within your organization, we can do that as well. So I think it's worthy of us thinking when we hear people say, "Oh, it's not my role," to actually think about what's under the surface, what's getting in the way, what's the barriers, what's the fear, what's the concern, and having a really heartfelt conversation about that, and not judging it, just saying it's okay to feel this way as well. It's okay to actually have a think about this. And it's also okay to reach out for support and services as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And often when it's not my role, it comes from fear of not wanting to be involved, or not, it's not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say. And you mentioned a couple of really key points in there, Natalie, is that if you don't know, that's okay too. If you're not sure how to approach this, that's perfectly fine. But you do absolutely have resources that you can tap into. So in organisations, they've got employee assistance programs, which are the most underutilised programs that I know of, that actually have heaps of value. You can ring them and say, I've noticed this about someone. I don't know how to approach it. What would you suggest? And they'll help you through that. If you're a leader, at any level of the organisation can make those phone calls and get that help. If you're not sure you're the right person, you can talk to someone. Talk to your HR person. Lots of us are very lovely and friendly. Or talk to your manager and say, look, I've noticed this about someone and I wanted to have a chat. Can you give me some suggestions? You can ring Beyond Blue or Lifeline and they will assist you as well. So this, I'm not sure, that's perfectly okay. Not everybody knows what they need to say, but there are absolutely places that you can get the help so that you can have the conversation. Or someone might say, you're probably not the right person, so let's find the right person for them. So that it's, because it's not always you who is the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another good point too. So it's not you may not be the right person. It might actually not feel like it's your role, and that's okay as well. There's others that can support the person. We do think that there's no one perfect way to have a conversation. I do love this little post-it note that says, if plan A doesn't work, well, the alphabet has 25 more letters. So stay cool, try something different, et cetera, et cetera. And that might be actually a clue to one of the questions we've had here as well. And so Scott has asked, what if you're sure they have a mental health issue, but they're adamant they don't? And I'm glad you raised that, actually, Scott, because I actually have experienced that situation in the workplace. And I've also had people come up to me during programs and say, not mental health programs, actually, just our normal coaching programs. So during coaching programs, during the Certificate for Workplace and Business Coaching, or a Leader as Coach program, or a team coaching program, whatever it might be, I've had people come up quietly during breaks and actually tell me that they think someone's got a mental health issue that's undiagnosed, or they're not doing anything about it, and that might be affecting the way they're showing up today in the room. So what you've asked there about what if you're sure they have a mental health issue but they're adamant they don't, I think that little snippet about plan A, plan B, etc. It's all about continuing the conversation. So if we're not a psychologist, we're not trying to do a diagnosis here, but we're trying to continue the conversation to support a person. And we can't say, oh, they've definitely got a mental health issue, but we can continue the conversation to continue to support them. And we've got some ideas here, Paula, that you might like to share with us as well.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to note here is you can't make someone deal with something that they are not ready to deal with themselves.
Yeah.
So our role isn't to make someone go and get the help that they need. Our role is to be a support for them for when they are ready to do that, and letting someone know that you're here and prepared to listen is the key at this point in time, because you can send someone to a psychologist and they still won't necessarily get the benefit of it if they're not ready for it. So it's really important that we might have a suspicion, and Natalie's right, we don't diagnose, but we might have a suspicion. We might know that things might be able to help, but keeping the dialogue open is what's really important. And the are you okay? So asking, are you okay? I actually are you okay to me is one of those closed questions, and it's not my favorite question, but how's everything going for you is probably where I like to move it to. And that's the other key to this, is that the questions that you ask and how you approach has to be genuine to you. So if it has to come from you, not just quoting things that you've heard, that like taking a question, if it's not the right, like in all coaching, you take the question, if it doesn't feel right for you, you make it feel right for you. So I generally ask, how's everything going for you? What's happening in your world? Listen with an open mind. So this is where our non-judgmental piece really kicks in, is that we just need to listen, and sometimes what we hear is really hard. And it's important that we don't judge what they're saying, because no world is perfect. Explain why you're concerned. I've noticed these things. This looks different for you. Is everything all right? I actually say I'm actually concerned, and I just want to make sure that you're getting everything that you need to help you at this point in time. Be prepared to wait and be comfortable with the silence. And I don't know about all the other coaches out there, but the silence bit always makes me feel twitchy on the inside. So I have to practice my very calm breathing to make sure that I allow that silence to sit. You throw out the question, and then for someone, this might be the first time they've ever said anything about it. And for it to actually come out, you have to create that space for them. As coaches, we don't give advice. We're very good at exploring options. So what is available? And at this point, we're not necessarily having a coaching conversation, and the person might not know all the options that are available. So we do actually have the opportunity at this point to talk about some options that could be available. But the key is that the person has to pick the option or the way forward that is best for them. And it might not be what you think, and they might not want to choose an option at this point, where, again, we're not going to force them to pick an option, but just encouraging them to think about, so what's something that you could do? What's one thing that we could do that you could do in the next week that might make a difference to how you're feeling at this point?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about what you're saying there, Paula, and also thank you for sharing those things. And I'm thinking about Scott's question as well. And I think it's okay to actually say what you're saying there, that, I am actually concerned about you. I have noticed some changes. You may not want to talk to me about it. Do you have support? What support do you have? Is there someone you can talk about it or talk about your situation with? So there will be people who are quite closed and don't want to open up at all. And so for me, it is about trying to continue that conversation, continue the openness until perhaps they are ready to open up to you or to someone else. As you say, can't force them to do something. So, and a lot of people don't want to admit that they might actually have an issue going on. They see it as a sign of weakness, or there's a stigma attached to mental health. It might actually impact my job, or I might think it might impact the confidence that you have in me to do my job. All sorts of things can happen. In certain organizations, it might mean that you're not fit for work if you actually bring up a mental health diagnosis. So there's so much going on for the person here. And I think that's where those things that you've offered there, Paula, are so important, to really be prepared, just continue to have the conversations, continue to open it up, see what we can actually do, because like we say, we can't force a person.
Yeah, and Scott's
And
just, yeah,
yeah, go on.
Scott said the old classic, I noticed, I feel concerned, how do you see it? And I like that too. It's that I've noticed this. How are you feeling about this? Is this something that you've noticed for yourself? And it really just is opening a conversation. And you're very right, Natalie, around, you might not be the right person. They might never speak to you. but the fact that you raised it might actually be important to that person. So it's this whole thing is if you say nothing, then people think that everything is okay, and that they look that there's that no one has noticed anything. So even if you're not the right person for them at that point in time, the fact that you noticed tells them that someone in the world saw them. And that's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember a situation, an example that I was in where I actually did raise the conversation with a person, and they said, "Oh, no, I've been to a psychologist, and they said I don't have anxiety, and they said I don't have depression, and they said I don't have." So the person has actually been to a psychologist. They don't have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety or post-traumatic stress. So they don't have an actual clinical diagnosis. That doesn't mean that you haven't noticed that things might not be quite right. And you can still do exactly as Scott has said, still express concern about what you're seeing, what you've noticed. And then, as you say, open up those questions to say, well, would you be comfortable to share, or would it be worthy of sharing? Or is it something you'd like to do is to share? And it's really important. And Jennifer, thank you for jumping into here. You offer, I believe most coaches have built rapport and trust enough to have these conversations. The challenge is often with a leader who often avoids the conversation because they don't know what to do with the response. That is true too. So again, that goes under the surface about why do we think it's not our role, or why are we not comfortable to do it? And yes, I do believe as coaches, because we have, as you say, built that trust and rapport, that we're in a very good position to actually bring up the conversation. Or what I have noticed mostly is that people share it with me. So I have found I don't actually have to bring up the conversation. You know, they actually have shared. If they do share, that's when I check in. Do you have the support structures, or what support structures do you have in place? And then they often share what support structures, or we discuss what support structures they do need. So
I
yeah,
think
all
too,
very
Natalie,
important.
sometimes what happens is people think that where that they are is okay. In as much as I
Mm,
was talking to someone recently who I had noticed some changes in them, and they're like, "Well, I've got a lot on, and everyone has tough things in their life that happen. Everyone has tough things, don't they?" And I'm like, "Yes,
yeah,
everyone does have tough things. That doesn't mean that you have to hit rock bottom before you get some help. You're allowed to ask for help before it gets there. And when you're in those tough problems, that's when seeking help can be really beneficial. So it's also that you don't have to get to the bottom of the barrel before you put your hand up and ask for help.
yeah. Recognizing those signs in ourselves, and those signs of where we're pushing past stress and pushing past the limits that we have, and potentially pushing into burnout. And so we've often talked about, ramping up into the red zone. And so recognizing those indicators in ourselves and putting those circuit breakers or support structures in place. Absolutely. And as Scott said, has shared again, he's offered here, well said, they're more likely to share with a coach than their boss. And who knows how your boss will respond. So these are actually genuine concerns as well. So thank you, Lee Chan. You said here, I think it's important to offer the opportunity for the conversations to happen, but we shouldn't force anyone. It's very important. That is the theme that we're hoping that we're getting across today. Some people don't want to burden others with their issues, but an open conversation to vent is important. And I believe it's important for you to, as the receiver, to not then take on the issue personally and take personal responsibility, or to fix it, or to take action for the other person. So thank you. I think that's a really lovely way of summarizing what we've talked about. You're not taking on the burden. You're not fixing this. You're not forcing a conversation. You're not taking on the responsibility. All of these things. You may have to take action if the person is at risk. Of course, we talk about that, but it's a really nice way to summarize what we're talking about here today. So thank you everyone for being part of this conversation. I really want to acknowledge you all for being here with us today to have conversations about mental health in the workplace. As we mentioned, the World Health Organization sees it as so important, like we do, that they've actually made it a theme for this year's World Mental Health Day. So thank you for showing up. Thanks for being part of the conversation. And thanks for being part of the work that we can do to enable Mental Health Thursday conversations in the workplace. We really encourage you to look after yourself. If you or someone you know needs support, or contact, as we said, Lifeline Beyond Blue. Or the other thing I'd like to offer you, if you actually put in into Google emergency services, you can get emergency services around the world, and you can also get mental health support services in Google from around the world. So wherever you are in the world, including the suicide support services. So it's really great the access we have to getting the contacts, the websites, the lines that we need from all around the world. So we're offering you here the Australian ones, but you can definitely get them worldwide. Thank you. People are saying thank you for the important conversation. Thank you for hosting it. And Jennifer says, if organisations adhere to reducing psychological hazards at work, this is a massive step to help prevent people, helping people and preventing mental health issues in the workplace. So thank you, Jennifer, for summarising that for us. We have a lot of things coming up. We have our certificate for workplace and business coaching. We have our diploma. There's lots of executive coaching going on at the moment, mentor coaching and mediation services going on at the moment as well, sorting out some difficulties in the workplace. So we have all these final sessions coming up before we hit the end of the year. Feel free to tap into those as we go along. And as always, we say thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Enjoy your coaching, and thank you for opening up the mental health conversations as well. We look forward to catching up with you at our next webinar. We will say goodbye for now.